Some outfits are not just clothes, they tell a story, and our guest will help us understand how. Now, today's episode is very wholesome, so we'll keep it simple, like just like sipping a warm cup of tea or coffee, whatever your favorite beverage is. Anyway, our guest is Richa Maheshwari, and she has a lovely brand called Boito, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Great, I got the name right. Okay, so she'll tell us, of course, about the brand, but I'll just give you a little introduction. Now, they work a lot with, art, culture, textiles of Orissa, and I feel it's very important, for us as a fashion podcast or a fashion fraternity or in the industry or even outside to, recognize such things, to promote it, to understand better. And let's just dig in. Hi Richa, how are you?
Hi Priyanka, thank you so much for having me here, and it's a
Great
pleasure.
to have
Yeah,
you.
it's lovely. It feels amazing.
Got it. So it's so great that how people you have got people from Orissa like the artisans to represent, and is there what are their emotions right now?
I think it's a feeling of pride. It's a feeling of accepting a challenge and delivering and feeling accomplished because you're working on something very different from what you have been working all this while.
Yeah.
At Boito, we have this philosophy where we work artisan first, as in the designer kind of goes into the cluster and figures out with the artisan that what is it that you want to present? What is it that you feel proud of? What is it that, you've inherited as legacy from your grandfather? Which is probably dying. But how can we present it in a format that the world will be able to assimilate very easily? So it's not exactly traditional, but at the same time, it tells a timeless story. So I think these are powerful things, even for the artisan, because it's home, right? And it's presenting home to a global platform. So I think it's a very challenging task because we kind of work with, okay, how can we tweak this art form so that, maybe change the colors a bit and, maybe just use one panel of something that you're proud of on, let's say, the back of a jacket. So you make that statement.
Yeah.
But at the same time, work with that traditional technique or tool or mechanism. Don't mess with that. So I think that's been pretty exciting as a journey. And the artisan also feels very good because at the end of the day, they're getting to present what they want to present. So, it's been fun.
Lovely. And why do you think, nowadays I see a few brands who are
Right.
working towards promoting this sort of art culture of various states, wherever they belong from or whatever is close to home. So why do you think this has become important and why should we speak about this?
So I think two things, right? Orissa for me is, of course, it's my home state, so I have a different sort of emotion attached to it. But at the same time, feeling rooted. I grew up all over the country, to be honest. My dad worked with the State Bank of India, so which means we kept getting transferred every few years. And
I somewhat relate to that because, I also lived in a few different places while growing up.
Right.
And honestly, there were pros and cons, of course. Maybe we'll discuss a little more about that.
Right.
But it used to feel like, okay, I just started making friends and now I'm going to another place. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Even the local nuances of language, of food, of festivals, nothing sticks because you're always adapting to something new.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, I started missing all of that. And that's what brings me back to the rooted story, because once you feel like you're at home, there's a different emotion that you go through. And I went through it. So when I entered the state of Orissa after 42 years of being everywhere else but Orissa, I think I felt like I'm home. And I wanted to do something deeply with that state. Orissa, of course, speaks volumes in terms of ancient history, Ashoka coming in with the Buddhism beginnings. It had a very strong maritime history because we had access to a port when it was Kalinga. And we were the first state to have brought in foreign trade because we could weave a lot of interesting things and take them offshore to, let's say, a Bali or a Java, and those kind of places. So that powerful maritime history And then there were many, many other tales, through the state, like Kunak, how it was built in the middle of a water body in the Bay of Bengal.
Okay.
How the king had a dream and he said that he wants to build it in the form of a chariot that's coming out of water. How does one construct a structure like that? 7 horses
I'm
pulling
getting
that chariot
reminded
out.
of my history lessons from when I was a child.
Yeah, and it's just powerful storytelling. And I grew up with my grandmom narrating all of these stories,
Oh,
and I was very
lovely.
fascinated. But the interesting thing for me was when I went to rediscover my state and I went into little villages and little remote pockets, there's not been much spatial movement in terms of communities moving across the state. They've stayed where they were, which means the art form has been pure. It hasn't been mixed around. So Sambalpuri, you will find weavers on the western belt of Odisha, whereas a Khandua, you will find weavers on the eastern coast of Odisha near Cuttack and Nuapatna. So the thing is that, and most of these communities house their belief systems in their textile.
Okay.
So which means the storytelling has really stayed pure and it has passed down generationally. And these are timeless tales and very interesting tales. So for me, 1, I love stories. 2, there are such beautiful stories to tell. And 3, they're all housed in their textiles. So it was very easy for us to just work with the existing textile and bring it to the fore. Just the way I was fascinated, I'm hoping that the world gets fascinated by these stories.
Yeah, I mean, so, we love stories too,
Right,
okay?
right.
Whichever guest comes, I tell them ki, please tell us like a story about your life or how, whatever you're working with. So tell me like one story which you got to know from an artisan and, you would like to share with us.
Sure. So there is I'll tell you about this Bandha Sari,
Okay.
which is not something that got popular, but I love that story. And I found out from somebody in Sonpur. So there is a beautiful sari that was, it has a serpent moving across the length of the sari. And it has these lotus flowers built on the boundaries of the sari. The serpent doesn't really get to meet the lotus flower, but it's crawling across the length of the sari. And there is this poetry by a famous poet called Upendra Bhanj, Odia as well, like back in, I don't remember the century, and so you'll see on the sari the serpent moving, the lotus flowers there. Serpent is trying to serenade the lotus flower through this poetry. Right, and it's and this is a pre-loom process of tie-dye, resist dyeing, or ikat, as how all of us know it. So it's not as simple as painting on canvas or embroidering on top of something woven. It's as mathematical and calculative and needs expert thinking to be able to pre-design this on the loom and tie, there is a serpent being tied manually with thread. There are these writings of the poetry being tied with thread, on a pre-loom. It's a pre-loom process. And then it's dipped in dyes, multiple colors, depending on the number of colors you want on the final product. And then you finally weave it. So the weaving is simple, but the pre-weaving stages are very, very cumbersome and it needs a certain expertise. So I feel like this is art at its purest form because A, to be able to imagine something as beautiful as this, B, to be able to implement it on, a fabric or fiber, and C, so even though the serpent doesn't meet the lotus, it's continuously trying to woo. And there's also some concept of a key being stored somewhere on the sari so that the poetry is not being read by you and me, but you use the key to kind of translate the poetry so that it's understood only between these two people, So I feel like, and this is art that cannot be commissioned. I cannot ask somebody to do it. It's coming from within. So, but however, simple, it's not simple at all. It doesn't even sound simple. However beautiful it might sound, they stopped producing this because there isn't enough uptake. There's a lot of challenge in making it. They might take 2 months to actually work on one sari. So it's an expensive process. And obviously everybody needs the money to survive and sustain their livelihoods, right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy for the weaver to switch to, let's say, a very simple geometric pattern. Where there's no artistic involvement, there's no artistic thinking, but just dumb down your brain and serve what the market needs you to serve because everybody's into fast fashion. They want to keep changing their wardrobe. So you want something churned out quickly. We don't have, the generation today does not have the patience to wait for something. And I feel like that really puts people like these artists, and weavers are artists of the highest form, they're brilliant at how they imagine. Even the color coordination, I think they're very good at it without being told or without having attended an institute training. It's there. It's there. It's passed down generationally. So now to be able to take that knowledge away from them, or the freedom to actually work on what they want and what they are proud of, take that away because the demand of the market is elsewhere, feels a bit off to me, So
It does.
if there is a way to be able to promote this, then we should. So that's the endeavor at Boito. And the deal is that we will encourage you to work on what you want to work and present what you want to present to the world. But at the same time, we'll help you. Maybe, it's coming in a red and black pattern as a very busy sari. So we'll probably change the color palette a bit, but you continue with the art form. Whereas we can make like a panel of it at the back of a kimono jacket that can then be presented to a global market.
So you make like these small tweaks while keeping the whole essence together.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Right.
So what the story that you told me, it sounds like it has a lot of precision.
Yeah.
And, people like, here, let's say in Delhi, they think that they are so smart and everything. So listen to this and then judge for yourself.
No, and this is something that we're after. We haven't been able to revive it, but we are really after them because it just feels such a beautiful story. So even if they weave one sari and we can partition it into multiple, panels on jackets, and they continue their art form, and we are able to kind of section it and present it in a way that the world is able to consume it in simpler formats. So that's the bridge that we're trying to cross here.
Got it.
Yeah.
So when you started this whole concept,
Right.
how did the market take it? Like when you launched it, how did the people take it? And I want you to tell me, how did different age groups sort of deal with it? Yeah.
So honestly, when we designed this, we knew that this is meant for a slightly older audience because, they have more patience. They're willing to wait. You don't want something off the rack. If I say that, I'm going to take 3 months to make this and give it to you, I don't think a young audience will be appreciative of something like that. But we want to bring in that culture. Okay. We want people to understand that you really have to want something to replenish your wardrobe because the world is not ready for that kind of a fashion dump.
I think that's in every sector of your life, not just fashion. If you want something, you really got to wait for it and yearn for it.
Fashion today is the biggest pollutant for this planet. So I think we all have to open our eyes to that and buy less, right? So I think if one really wants something, one is willing to pay the price for it and wait for it. I think that's the effort with Boito as well. And so yes, like I said, it is the slightly older section, and I would say like 30 and above, which has gained the maximum traction with our launch. And we've got the most consumers in that age bracket as well, because they're also appreciative of holding on to things that are timeless. They're not interested in, okay, what's next, but what's old? How can we keep it? How can we continue it? Why is history so exciting? What was there in my history? Where do I come from? That rootedness.
Got it,
I feel like that sort of intensity comes in with that slightly. And I don't mean to be mean or generalistic here, but it's just been my experience. And it hasn't been like too much of an experience because we launched only last December.
Okay.
So it's not been that long, but yes, we
so
have received a lot of love.
This is like a slightly personal question.
Sure.
So have you ever been like that history enthusiast child, who's like so interested in understanding what's happening, what happened, what's the past, present, future?
Right.
Were you that kind of a person?
I wasn't, to be honest. I was always I need marks, so I have to like figure out how to get marks and figure out the right questions, study and because I was always under the pressure of, I need to grow up and become an engineer because that's fast money, so I need my career sorted. History was boring. Like every child, my children would agree with that. But also the way it's taught, right? It's not immersive. It's more the way and that's a separate discussion altogether. That
we would love to have it.
the way our academic systems are school systems are set up, it is very focused on getting those marks at the end of the day, right? So people are taught to superficially glance through, okay, dates yaad kar lo,
Yeah.
naam yaad kar lo, kab kya hua yaad kar lo. But what actually happened? How do you immerse yourself? And that's when you actually experience it all. So when I say I used to enjoy my grandmother's stories, it was because I was living it up. I mean, I was imagining myself in that era, and I was like, oh, aisa hua tha. Oh, the Konark was built. There's a very beautiful story where this king who was trying to build the Konark, he had a dream that he needs to build this chariot coming out of water, being drawn out with 7 horses, and it has to be built in the middle of a water body. And I don't know if this is a myth or if it's actually the truth, but I'd like to believe in a powerful story. And he got his best architects on the job, but they couldn't get the structure in the middle of the water to stay.
Okay.
Because the water pressure was so high that it would destroy the structure, right? Every time they built something. So he was so harassed and so pareshan. So he went out, one evening, जिससे राजा अपनी प्रजा को check करने जाते हैं, वेश बदल के. So he was dressed up as somebody, and then he went out. It was a stormy night. He was hungry. He knocked on this village door, and this old woman, she opens the door, and he says, "I'm really hungry. Can you please give me shelter for the night and give me some food?" So she gives him very hot rice and dal. And he was so hungry that he put his hands right through the center of the rice and dal, which was piping hot. So he burnt his fingers. So this woman, she started laughing. She's like, "You're worse than our king." And he's like, "How so?" It's like, "You need to start from the side, because you start from the side, you build your foundation. And then when it's strong enough, you push it to the center of the water body." And he says, yeah. And that's what worked eventually, apparently. But, these stories, when my grandmother would narrate this to me, I would imagine myself in that period.
Yeah. I mean, I started imagining myself right now, okay? I was feeling like I'm knocking on the door of an old woman's
Stormy
house.
night. And
Yeah.
So it's just like, and we have so many of these little tales from villages across the state of Odisha. But the way history is taught in schools is not at all storytelling, right? It's just factual and it's boring.
So there was this term I remember growing up called mugging up, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Gen Alpha still uses it, but whatever. So the thing is, like, I used to be like, okay, I need to mug this up. I need to mug that up, okay?
Right.
Oh my God, the exam is tomorrow.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. Like, I never used to enjoy the process of, like, getting immersed and, like, thinking beyond grades, because that's how we were structured, right?
Right.
And there was so much pressure ki, oh, this person has gotten first, you are second, what's wrong with you? All those kind of things. But yeah, I think it has slightly changed a bit, I feel, from what it was before. At least what I see my sister doing right now, she's like much younger to me.
Okay.
So I realized ki, okay, times have become slightly better, I
Right,
feel.
right.
But you have kids, so you tell us. Has it changed?
I mean, no.
No?
No. I have one child in grade 8 and another in grade 10. No, I don't think so. I mean, things are still like, even though they might take a little bit of interest, but it's still not storytelling. It's still about getting the score and getting past it, because no one's going to choose history. Not many kids in our country choose arts. It's not a priority. But it's such a beautiful subject to even, like, I'm telling you, I've had this floaty feeling all my life until I discovered that being local and being, understanding your own roots can be very powerful. And history is linked to that. So just being able to go back to your family history, being able to understand your language fully, being able to communicate in your language, being able to understand what food did your grandparents make or whatever that is, it's powerful. And so I think, yeah. So
when we talk about food, okay, like, what are your memories from Orissa, or like even when you travel now, what are like the local delicacies?
Orissa is you have to come with me to Orissa
I
to
will,
experience it.
I will.
It's amazing. I think it's the best cuisine. I mean, I'm of course biased, but there's a lot of flavor. It's steamed. It's there's a lot of lotus stem being used. Lotus grows in abundance. It's also called the lotus eating state.
Okay.
There is very interesting vegetables, and I don't think I can do justice by just naming some things here and there, but come to our event and you'll experience it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's chena podo pita. There's a lot of chena-based sweets. I'm going to start salivating now if I talk about it too much more.
We will too if you start. Okay. So, you told us so many tales and everything, but is there any recent discovery that you've made that you did not know earlier, be it about like the place or the fashion or anything?
There are many such discoveries. I can tell you one, which is it's called the Gadaba or Gadaba, Gadaba community in south of Odisha. Now, they still make something called the kerang, which the yarn for which is sourced from the bark of a tree, which grows in their backyard.
Okay.
So I feel like it's a sustainable story at its peak because even the thread for your garment is kind of coming from,
A tree.
and from the tree. So they use the branches of the tree, they crush it and they get the strongest part of the twine and they kind of use rudimentary tools to make yarn out of it, and they weave a very strong fiber, which is a rectangular piece of cloth, and they use two of those to kind of cover their bodies, for women especially.
Okay.
And so one on top and one at the bottom. And it's a very sweet thing, but the tale goes that if a girl is able to weave two pieces of I'm saying kerang for herself, then she's considered eligible for marriage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but this was quite astonishing for me that there are so many textile traditions that are different across the state. There's ikat, which is the double ikat and the single ikat. Like I said, the Khandua Patto and the Sambalpuri spread on the western and eastern. In Koraput, you have many, many tribal communities. There's Kotpat textile where, the dye comes from again a tree origin, and it has a certain color palette which is fixed. It's all organic. Then there is the Dongriya Konth community where they are mountain worshippers. So there's a different kind of dome cotton that they hand spin, and then they embroider mountains onto their fabric. So it's because they worship mountains, their temples have mountains, and they kind of consider that as security and water provider and food provider. So that's that. There is the Bandha community that's come in from Africa many, many, many years ago.
I think I just saw this post on your Insta, I feel, about this community.
Yeah,
They're
the
wearing
Handloom
those
Day.
blue
National
outfits.
Handloom Day. We had posted about them. Yes. So they dress in beads and they're very gorgeous to look at. They're quite stunningly, aesthetic as well because the colors, if you notice. And so it's almost like we want to borrow from their style and present so that you and I can start dressing like that.
Nice.
It's quite, we don't have to mess with it at all. So these are all discoveries for me. So the Bandha community weaves something called a ringa, which is a rectangular piece of fiber, which they only use as a mini skirt almost. Okay. And otherwise they cover their bodies in beads. So it's interesting for me to also discover all of these communities and spend time with them. Every place, there's a different food habit. The Bandha community makes their own alcohol with a double boiler system where they use like old rice and, the locally growing fruit like jackfruit or mango seeds and things like that. And it lasts for 2-3 days. So they make fresh alcohol every 2-3 days.
Wow.
So it's exciting and it's a fun journey. So yeah.
Absolutely. So, I was interested in understanding that you said ki they wear mini skirts. Like they still
it was
wear
a comparison. No, it's not a mini skirt.
Okay.
It's not a mini skirt. So you have to imagine like a rectangular piece of cloth that they use as a loin cloth.
Okay.
So it's the only part of their body that's covered in cloth.
Okay.
Everywhere else, it's beads.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's something we should try and see on a runway maybe. People are going to get excited. Like, wow, this is such a new thing.
Yeah, imagine, right?
Yeah.
And it's a multicolored, very stunning garment. It's quite a showstopper. We should definitely try it like you suggested.
Definitely. Okay, so I want to understand that, whenever you started this whole thing, you must have faced like challenges and so much has happened. So how has your personal style evolved? Do you think it has changed because of this? Do you think you've become more mindful, or how have you changed overall, personally?
To be honest, I have hated myself for the amount of clothes I have in my cupboard. And this realization happened, of course, after this journey began. I have been a big shopper. I won't lie to you. And I've been like, I want this and I want that. Oh, this is new on the market. I need to own everything. I was quite a maniac. But I think that process has slowed down in a big way. I have never been associated with a fashion space. I am an engineer by profession, by education, not by profession is the wrong way to say it.
Yeah.
But, and I've spent 17 years of my life with a corporate job where I would just be excited about new things on the block, like every other person would be. But I think this journey with the communities, with seeing how one can survive with minimalistic needs. If it's jackfruit season, they can have jackfruit and moody, the puffed rice, 2 meals a day for the entire season and still be content. Of course, it doesn't speak volumes of the economic conditions of these communities, but at the same time, it's giving us a powerful story of how one can survive without the need for anything external. Making do in the best possible way with the resources that you have. At the same time, not exploiting the resources to an extent that you don't have enough for next year. So I feel like there's a lot of learning that one can do from these communities. And I stopped in my tracks and I said, okay, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So, and they don't have any carbon footprint. They don't travel. They're pretty content in their setups. Of course, I'm here to show that there is the other side where you can have hygienic conditions when it comes to sanitary napkin usage or toilets or things like that. But otherwise, they're pretty okay. I mean, they don't travel, so there's no fuel, there's no need for packaging, there's no courier service happening. Whatever they need is around them. So I think that's a big lesson for people like us that one can, do with minimal needs. And the other thing for me, another big lesson for me is that the handloom sector can really provide with a lot of employment opportunities in our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So given our country is a people-rich economy, I feel like we need to tap into that for the overall progress of our being, right? So if we are all promoting handloom, we are promoting that employment in a sense. And it's almost like saying, you eat at home. Don't eat packaged food. Encourage, it's okay if you want to wait for 2 hours, but you're getting freshly made food.
I feel people are more about promoting themselves rather than other people. That's how it's generally the perception is. But I hope that changes. Now, about the earlier point, I can't speak much about travel because, see, I love traveling. Okay, so I'm not the right person to comment on that. But definitely, some learnings, on how to be content. Let's say, being content in any situation, let's say being content in your relationship or your family situation. I mean, so it's just about being content in whatever you have. And of course you should strive, to achieve things and everything. I'm not somebody who will say no to that. But also I feel ki being greedy and, overdoing things is actually a learning that people should take. You should refrain from that. So
yeah, and I'm guilty of being greedy. I still am, to be honest. I want this
most
and I
people
want that.
are. Yeah, most people are.
But I think I've managed to. There are a lot of triggers in me which were there earlier, but I've managed to really wind down. And I've also learned being patient because, these communities are very different in the way they operate. So there's no chase. I mean, even if I tell them कि तुमको double पैसा मिलेगा, please ये जल्दी से कर दो, it won't
work.
It won't move them because they're like, हमको इतना ही चाहिए. But we'll take our own sweet time to do it. You can't mess with our lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So I think that resistance is powerful.
Yeah.
Because life is everyday. You don't want to mess with your everyday for chasing a target which nobody knows whether you're going to live until that time. So at least live fully today. And I think that sense is very strong in these communities, So I want to respect that. And therefore I cannot rush them into saying कि मुझे इतने सारे बनाने हैं, तो तुम please, help me because the market is going to demand this and they love your work and let's just get after this and let's get it going. But I don't want to do that because it'll just uproot.
So they have a slow approach.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we have to respect that.
Absolutely.
And I want to become like that, which is what I'm saying. Like I used to have a
I
lot
think
of
it's
triggers.
important for you because, if you have to interact with them on a daily basis, then you have to think like them, right? In a way.
Right,
So
right,
makes sense.
right.
Yeah.
So they've had a very positive influence on me.
Lovely.
Doesn't mean that I've become a saint. But
We can't be one. We can't be a saint. But yeah. Okay, so we'll just go towards the ending or
Right,
something.
right.
Okay, so I have an interesting last question for you, and
Sure.
we'll keep it short.
Yeah.
So, if there had to be like a short film or a documentary made on the life of these artisans, what would it highlight? Like, what would the main point be, or what would be the title of it? Anything.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be, slow living. And a lot of these communities are farming communities who hold on to their tradition and value systems very strongly. So, how they are self sufficient, self sustained, and how they are unwilling to be influenced by civilized people, as you might put in quotes, but how they are very strong and determined to kind of continue their resilience in doing what they do. And so I can't say that, hey, I know you like farming a lot, but I think weaving will get you more money, so please weave more and farm less. No. They're pretty straightforward. कि नहीं हम खाना कहाँ से खाएंगे? I need to farm. It doesn't matter if I make more money there or here. This is the way I think, and this is the way I will continue. So there is a power to that, I think. There's a power to believing what you want to believe in and staying positive through it and not getting influenced by that person is ahead of me. There's a certain peace that gets induced because of that thinking, and I think they are super powerful in that process. So
Lovely.
yeah.
So a story of resilience, inspiration.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the end. Now, before we end, we always play like a small game.
Sure.
Where I'll ask you a few questions and you have to be quick about it, okay?
Right.
It's not at all serious, so you can be as fun as you want.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, your favorite way to spend a rainy day?
Cooped in a corner with my kids and my dog.
Oh, wow, great. Okay, if you had to live in a movie or a TV show, which one would you choose?
In a movie or a TV show?
If you were the main character, which movie or TV show would you want to choose?
Which movie or TV
Yeah.
show? Okay. I'd say Seinfeld because it's got one of my favorite few comic characters.
Lovely. Which fashion era do you find the most inspiring?
I think Maharani Gayatri Devi is very inspiring for me. She was out there and cool and royal and regal and just elegant.
Lovely. What's the boldest fashion choice you have ever made?
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. Yeah, that can be an answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that bold with fashion.
Lovely. Okay, what is your go-to color combination that never fails you?
Black and white.
Okay. An interesting fact or skill you have learnt very recently?
Interesting fact or skill. I think ikat weaving. Yeah, I didn't understand how this pre-loom process works, what's the maths behind it, how graphs are translated,
Now you
etc.,
know.
etc. Now I know.
Lovely. Okay. And lastly, your go-to comfort food?
Dal chawal.
Okay.
With a
Nice.
little
Simple.
aloo on the side.
Lovely. How simple. That's cool. Okay, so, that brings us to the end. And before I end, I also have seen celebrities like Zeenat Aman ji and there were some more people.
There's Guneet Monga.
Yeah,
They're all big
correct.
supporters.
Correct,
Thankful
yeah.
to them. Yeah.
So,
Reema
what
Das.
is one feedback that they gave you or how did they feel about the brand that you would like to share?
I think they really found the silhouettes pretty interesting and how it's done with Handloom. So we have the USP of being in the luxury market using Handloom in a big way, right? So there's a lot of storytelling happening. And I think the one feedback for us is that the larger canvas pieces, like the big jackets, the statement pieces, are a lot more sought after versus like the thin petite dresses, etc. So I think we're working our way towards building a family of jackets. That's the special area that we want to progress in. Yeah.
This could be a nice title of any article or whatever, family of jackets. I
Family
love
of
it.
jackets, yes.
Yeah.
All kinds of jackets.
Great. So thank you so much, Richa,
Thank
for
you. Thanks,
joining us
Priyanka.
today. And we enjoyed. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. We will come up with a lot more interesting stories like we did today. If you have any suggestions for us, please email us on pods@indiatoday.com, or you can text us on 8588 966 996. Thank you. Bye.